Okay. Okay, first ever live stream. Can everyone hear me? Can I maybe get a message from the live chat if I'm online? Anyone? Okay, technical issues were not a surprise, so yeah, well, we got someone. Thank you, Jerry. Oh, good. Okay, so welcome everyone to the first ever History Revealed live stream. I'm Joel, and I'm very happy to be with you all. And I have something I'd like to show you, something that I've wanted to show a lot of you for a while now. And bear with me a second. Here we have the 100,000 subscriber play button. Now, the amount of work this took to get was enormous, and the amount of support I got from you guys to get it was also incredible. So thank you so much for this, and as many of you know, we are far beyond 100,000 subscribers now, 144 at the latest count. It's all moved so quickly. You know, this was only set up, I only started on YouTube about 6 months ago. Properly, I mean, if you look at the account, it'll say last March, but that's when I just created the account. This has only been the last few months. And the speed it's grown and the support I've got from everyone is just unbelievable. So this is it, and this is where all hard work has gone to. And hopefully in the future, and don't worry, I very much appreciate this, hopefully one day in the future we will have a 1 million subscriber play button to show you all as well. Thank you. I'm just reading the chat now. Thank you all for your congratulations. Well, look at this. Attila the Hun, thank you. Julius. Was that Echelon 2K8? I like that. Kakuza Mishima, thank you to you as well. Someone asked, how long did it take to get after 100,000? I think I assume that means how long did it take to 100,000. It took me about 5 months to get to 100,000 subscribers. About 5 months. Now, what's annoying is I was delayed with things in life in the meantime. So I had other things going on, which meant for a good 2 months I was barely making any videos at all, which was incredibly frustrating because I think I could have done it in 4. For a good 3 months I was making posting 1 or 2 videos a day. It was going, just the speed everything was going was incredible. Wow, just looking at all the messages coming through. Really, really great. How long after to get the plaque? Good question. So, in total about a month, because it took them about a week to email me to say, well done, you've got the plaque, and then, well, you can order the plaque. Then you have to order the plaque. They create it for you. They create a custom plaque for you, a custom play button, and it is made. I don't know if too many YouTubers talk about this. It's made in Oklahoma, in America, so they have to make it in Oklahoma and then send it out from there. So if you live in Oklahoma, expect to get it very quickly. But if you live in the UK like I do, it's going to take some time, and that it took 3 weeks from me ordering it to arrive. So 1 week after to get the email, and then another 3 weeks to get the play button, and so a month in total. So yeah, that's the story. That's the story with that. Other people say, "Do you just get it?" So the actual time you get to 100,000 subscribers is low. Sorry, not much happens when you get to 100,000 subscribers. Not much at all. Someone just no one message. You don't get a message from someone. You don't get you don't get an email immediately. It's really quite slow. I think a lot of people think immediately you get the message, right, your plaque's on the way, or your play button's about to arrive. It's a really sort of slow process. Just a couple of technical things. Can everyone see me? I know I can tell people can hear me because I'm getting messages, but can people see me? I'll just wait. Can people see? They can hear, but can they see? Tell you what, I'll put the YouTube play button in the background whilst I wait. Yes, good. Good, I'm glad to see that. Okay, so in terms of direction of the channel, as you can guess so far, the point of this is to counteract what's been going on. More like, yeah, I could just reading the comments on other side. I promise I'm in a very difficult setup, just so you know. I'm just trying to find space, trying to find good lighting, which is very difficult in my current situation. So I appreciate your patience and appreciate your tolerance of the lack of let's say technical prowess that I have in regards to live streams. But I'll work on it. I'll learn the lessons, and I'll learn from your feedback. And I'm excited to hear from your feedback, what you like, what you don't like, what you think could be better, what could be what's good but could be improved on. I'm always keen to learn, always keen to hear what you've got to say. So in terms of, as I was saying, in terms of what the direction of the channel, the point is to use the sources, use the primary sources, and actually tell the story of history it's there but not being told. And I think people can see that through the videos. You know, I've talked about the Barbary pirates, slavery in the Mediterranean, talked about various histories of the British Empire, of American history, and just mention what is not being mentioned. And I think there's a real market for that. I think that's why the channel's done well. That's why people want to see it, and I think that's what they'll want to see going forward. And that's where it's going to go. It's going to carry on in that way. So it's also going to be, it's called History Revealed, the channel, but I would like it to make it a sort of history military crossover. And so by doing that, it sort of acts as a dual function, because you see lots of accounts which is very specifically history, or very specifically one area of history, but then others are very specifically military accounts. And so it's going to be a bit of both. I've mentioned a lot about the war in Ukraine, a lot about military history in general, so I've met that overlap, and that's going to continue. Just bear with me a moment whilst I message my technical support. So yes, that's going to be the plan. One thing I would really like to do in terms of long form content is I would really like to make reaction videos. So maybe I could get in the live chat. Maybe someone could say, it doesn't have to be now. You could put it up later on anywhere. Just sort of videos or subjects you'd want me to react to, because lots of people make history videos where they're reacting to something either positively or negatively, and especially if you think there's something out there that is propagating a myth or misleading people in some way, not giving the whole story, I'd really like to hear what kind of subjects you think that would be, and yeah, what people had in mind. So yeah, I'll just wait a second and see what we can come up with. Won't wait too long. I'll tell you something to look forward to, which I'm recording at the moment, and will be coming in the next few days. I'm going to make a reaction video to Netflix's Cleopatra documentary, because, as many of you may have seen, it's got a lot to answer for. And bear in mind, it sells itself as a documentary. You get a lot of historical fiction out there, artistic license. It's annoying, but whatever. You know, they're not historians. You don't want to be, as a fan of history, as a fan of whatever military stuff, you don't want to be, oh well, this is wrong, that's wrong, oh that's not realistic, he's not holding the gun in the right way. The whole time, it's artistic license. They're making it for an audience. Cut them some slack. But when they sell it as a documentary, like Netflix are doing now with Jada Pinkett Smith, you have every responsibility to get things right. And from what I've seen so far, they've got everything wrong. So look out for that video. Look out for that video, because that is going to be, I'm going to be putting that forward in the next few days, and I really hope everyone can enjoy that, and benefit from that. Let's just have a look at the comments here. What people have mentioned. Let's see, what have we got? Weimar Republic. No, I've actually not made a video on that. That's a good suggestion. That's the current war in Ukraine. Yep, current war in Ukraine. I've made quite a few videos on. So that's a welcome suggestion. What else? Someone said the creator of the Cleopatra documentary has said she knows Cleopatra is. Yep, I will be addressing that. What else? What are any other subjects? Have to have a look. Have a think about that one. So let's just bear with me a moment. Let me just sort a couple of technical things out. This is the problem when you're on your own. Some people have got producers who manage the whole stream for them. I'm afraid it's me, myself, and I in all the videos. I'm the voice, the editor. I create the video stream that you see in the YouTube Shorts and the TikToks and the Instagrams. Absolutely no one else is helping me. So this is the pitfall, unfortunately. But there you go. That's how it's going to be. So what else are we saying in terms of reactions? In terms of reactions, videos that I'll be making. Cleopatra's one. Maybe even other. That's Netflix. That's an enormous company making them. It doesn't have to be a sort of current series. It could be other YouTube videos. It could be current news. Because my God, the media coverage of history and of conflicts is appalling. It's absolutely appalling. And I think most people watching know that. They know that when they watch the news, you just have to. It's very frustrating, because if you look at sort of classic propaganda from the Soviet Union, what they would do is they would sort of lie in a formulaic way. So often the Soviet people would know exactly how the government would lie, so they could actually garner the truth based on the formula the way the Pravda or the Soviet press would lie. But because sort of modern press, in the way they cover wars, they don't lie as such. Sometimes they do lie, but they just miss out so much crucial information, or only give you half the story, that it's so difficult to tell what's really going on. So I'm going to try and sort of keep people informed in that sense. But I'm not a news channel, certainly not a news channel, not a journalist, and not interested in any of that. But that's what it's going to be. The war in Ukraine, I think some problems with the coverage. I think it's mostly, given the circumstances, mostly been okay. I'd say a low point, if people are interested, was the fall of Mariupol, which was in, I believe it was May of 2022, because the Western press just wouldn't admit that Ukraine had lost. they just would not admit it. They wouldn't refer to it as like Mariupol has fallen. They would say something like, what was it, step back from Mariupol, or tactical retreat or something. And although the fight of the Ukrainian Marines and various others in Mariupol was heroic, and how they managed to hang on for so long was phenomenal fighting and bravery. Unfortunately, Mariupol did fall, and they lost that one. They tied down enormous numbers of Russian troops to do it, and saved other sections of the Ukrainian front in their effort, but they did lose. But the Western press just wouldn't report a defeat. I think that's partly because at that time there was so much good news to report about Ukrainian resistance to Russia, and in Ukrainian sort of small-scale victories, or sort of local tactical victories. The numbers of Russian troops being lost was so huge at that time, so huge. Famously, the attack on Hostomel Airport, which a lot of people don't realise the war could have ended there and there had Russia established an air bridge to Kiev. And that's interesting. We mentioned Kiev. One thing I will not do on this channel is this silly sort of Ukrainianization of the English language. Why are we saying Kyiv now? Kyiv. In English we say Kiev, and a lot of this is what's so bizarre about it. When Ukrainians speak in English, they'll say Kiev. They won't say Kyiv. They will, in the same way that a French person, if they're speaking to you, won't call Paris Paris. They'll call it Paris if they're speaking in English. I don't know why we have to change everything. Also, the Dnieper River. We've said the word Dnieper for as long as I can remember in English, and now sort of Western media sources and others are calling it the Dnipro, because that's the Ukrainian way of saying it. I won't be doing that. It'll be Kiev, Kiev. Won't be saying Kyiv for any of this. I'll just take a quick stop and have a look at some of the suggestions. My mouse has decided to go funny. I don't know why, but let's have a look. Let's have a look. What have we got? English transportation to Australia of criminals. That could be an interesting one. You could talk. Oh, hey, okay. Christian Wilson says you could talk about how the New York Times covered up the Soviet genocide in Ukraine. I actually did talk about that. I made a video about Walter Duranty, the New York Times journalist who covered it up, and Gareth Jones, the Welsh journalist who tried to expose it, and how one failed and one succeeded. Oh, what else? Let's see. Let's have a look. English colonists transported to the Americas. I don't know about that. That may well be true. I'll have to look into that. What else? Like I said, there we go. I think I've got my mouse back now. Queen Charlotte thing. Oh yeah, someone mentioned that before. Is that going? Yeah, that's just that's a difficult one, because it's obviously total nonsense that Queen Charlotte was black. George III's wife was very much not black. She was very much white. I suppose people like Netflix will just fall back on, oh well, it's fiction. And whilst I'm somewhat sympathetic to that, try casting a black queen as a white woman, and the fury there would be. This is what I don't understand, sort of why history has become this battleground. Either keep it historically accurate completely, so everything matches up, or nothing matches up. But this very strange idea that it has to be one way. So if you have a historically white character, it's okay if you have a non a white actor or actress playing that person. But other way around, that's not allowed. So a historically black or non-white person has to be played by a non-white actor, but never a white one. I don't know why that applies. Race to the North Pole. That's a interesting topic. Lots of personality clashes there, and mudslinging. Could make a video about that. Will I change my profile logo? Yes, I will. Yes, so that's been I made that at the time of the Queen's funeral. Thought it was relevant at the time, and also actually made a good logo for the channel. But yes, that certainly needs to be updated. I will try and come up with something. The problem I've got is I would like to make a logo specifically to the channel, and what a lot of people do is they combine the initials of their channel in one way or another. The problem I've got with mine is it's HR. I cannot have a logo that has the letters HR on it. It will give people nightmares. Most people will watch my channel to get away from HR at work if they're working, or maybe fear HR in the future. I don't want to be associated with that, even if that's sort of the initials of the channel. So I've got some work to do with design there. So we'll look out for that at some point in the future, in the near future. Because yes, thank you for pointing it out. It does need to be changed. But going back to the war in Ukraine, because I would like to talk a lot about that today. We're in a very interesting position at the moment because the Ukrainian counteroffensive might have already begun. Certain indicators suggest it has, certain indicators suggest it maybe hasn't. We're not really sure. For example, it's been suggested that Ukraine has retaken some territory around Bakhmut. Again, small amount of territory. It's hard to tell. Is this just a local thing, or is this the start of something bigger? Quite interesting though with Bakhmut, how Russian social media and various Telegram channels have been suggesting for ages that Bakhmut's on the verge of falling, and God knows how many months later here we are. I mean, most of it is in Russian hands, but it's certainly not. It's not like Mariupol or various other cities which have completely fallen and in Russian hands. So that will be very interesting to watch. But where will be the main thrust of the counteroffensive? I know lots and lots of Western analysts have speculated on where that will be. Will it be in the north, sort of near the Russian border? Will it be around sort of Bakhmut area, or will it be the south? I think that's the most interesting to me, if it's in the south, because if Ukraine can properly cut off the land bridge to Crimea, that would be a phenomenal success and would be hugely significant. And the reason that would be so significant is because if you want a good quote, it's soldiers win battles, logistics win wars. If they could cut off the land bridge to Crimea, as well as somehow damage the Kerch bridge again, because it might be fully repaired by the summer, then logistics-wise is going to be very difficult for the Russian army in that area of southern Ukraine and in Crimea, because they'll have their supply lines cut effectively. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But this is an enormous front, lots of moving parts, and the Russians are very deeply entrenched. So everything's to play for, and I think speculation is, particularly around wars, is a really bad idea, because it's so unpredictable and there's so many factors that can make such a difference. Like take the tanks. Ukraine now has some of the best tanks in the world. It has American Abrams tanks, it has German Leopard tanks, British Challenger 2 tanks, the German tanks, the Leopard 2. This is an incredible arsenal. But something like that, do you want an idea of how unpredictable wars can be? Let's say a squadron of tanks is moving forward. Let's say they all get stuck in the mud. Suddenly this incredibly powerful weapon that could change the course of battles can't do anything. I mean, yes, they could maybe get it out later, but let's say they get bogged down in the mud and suddenly they're vulnerable to fire from Russian forces. That's game over. So it really is too difficult to tell how things will pan out. But the armaments Ukraine have got now, I even saw that I think Ukraine have just admitted they used a Patriot missile, an American Patriot missile for an interception. So that could be a, maybe not a game changer, but significant in Ukraine's air defense. So so many things going on. It'll be very interesting to watch. I'm just going to take a quick look at the live chat. And have a look what people are saying. Francis, don't know who that is. Oh, hang on, here we go. Who's the most deadly sniper in the First World War? Okay, that would be worth looking up. Certainly. I'll have a look at that. I could maybe make a video on that. Like I say, my what else? There is more to the, what does it say? There's more to the Ukraine conflict than the extremely simplistic goodies and baddies narrative. Yes, that is true, but that's life. That's life. Nothing is as simple as goodies and baddies. And I'll tell you, I think NATO actually bears a lot of responsibility for what's going on, but not in the way that you might think. I'll explain what I mean by that. So, in 2008, NATO had the option. They had a big conference in Bucharest, I believe it was. 2007 or 2008. I think it was 2008. And they had the option of taking on Ukraine and Georgia as members. Now, lots of NATO members were very keen on this. So, America, the Baltic countries, Poland, really wanted Ukraine and Georgia on board. However, France and Germany did not. And that's very significant, because what they did was, if they didn't want Ukraine to join NATO, if there wasn't enough consensus, then they should have just said it's not on. Same for Georgia. You're not joining. Don't get the idea in your head. Don't apply. Forget it. But what they did was the worst of both worlds, because they allowed Ukraine and Georgia to expose themselves by applying for NATO membership. So suddenly, because that gets Russia's attention, and suddenly Russia views this as a threat. Now, if they were allowed into NATO, then it wouldn't matter, because they're protected as a member. But what it did was, it was playing this sort of like hard to get. It's like, oh yeah, why don't you apply? Why don't you apply? You might become a member. And then they apply, and they're rejected as members. And what happens? Ukraine and, well, Georgia first, and then a few years later, Russia invades Ukraine. So, like I say, they both exposed themselves. They put their head above the parapet, exposed themselves to danger by applying, but were then rejected. And so, whatever protection they might have had as members went out the window, because they're not members. They're just still normal countries. And 2008, Georgia is invaded. South Ossetia and Abkhazia to this day remain in Russian hands, part of sovereign Georgian territory. And I think a lot of people forget, maybe they don't forget, but I think Ukraine only became to sort of true global prominence when Russia launched a full-scale invasion. I don't know what I mean, obviously when Crimea and the Donbass were invaded, at the time it did gain attention, but it didn't, for some reason, Western public attention, it just didn't really consider it that much of a big deal, even though a sovereign country had been invaded and their territory had been annexed by a foreign power, which is incredibly rare and sets a terrible precedent. I don't know why that got so little attention, but it did. So there you are. I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, the scale is larger. The scale is larger. So Russia invading the entire country rather than a small, there's still large territories. A smaller segment of it would get more attention. But I think it's part of the problem in the West that not enough attention was paid earlier on to Russia, to what's been going on, and to the West's detriment, unfortunately. But there you are. Just bear with me a second whilst I just have a check how things are going. Okay, this is good. Good. I'm glad plenty of people are watching. So what else? What else are we? Let's just have a quick look at the chat. Is there anything more? Anything more that we can garner? No, not just yet. Not just yet. But like I say, I'd really love suggestions. Really love suggestions at some point or in the future which videos people want to see me make a reaction to. I'd really like to see that because I think there's a lot of debunking that needs to be doing, or a lot of adding that can be done. So if someone, like I said before, if someone makes a good video, there's always extra information that I could add, because you can only get so much into a YouTube video or into a TikTok video. So it will be really nice to see that. And speaking of shorts and TikTok, I will be appearing in the TikTok soon enough. So I think it's time. You know, mostly I've just been narrating the videos, which has been good, and I'll continue to do narrations. But I will be appearing as well, either answering questions or making my own original content. All that would be good. And another thing going forward, which I think people might be interested in, is I'd like to do some streams of games. So if people suggest games they'd like to see, I was thinking Assassin's Creed, given the obvious sort of like historical setting of Assassin's Creed. I think there's going to be, there'll be a new one at some point, but the one in France, Assassin's Creed Unity, I think is particularly interesting, and the gameplay is particularly nice. I mean, I think the most recent ones have been dreadful. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, well, that's not the most recent one. Valhalla, then Odyssey, and the one before Origins wasn't bad, but Valhalla and Odyssey were really rubbish, I thought. Really moving away from what it's supposed to be. So it'll be for now probably Assassin's Creed Unity. What else? Hearts of Iron's an interesting one. Thank you for mentioning it. I've not played that yet. Obviously, I've heard of it, but I know it's very popular. I'd have to become good at it. I know quite a few people stream it. One of the Total War games is another one, which I'm happy to do. Again, a bit like Assassin's Creed, there's not been a good one for a while, but the recent remake of Rome Remastered, I think has got a lot of potential. So that would be definitely something I'd be up for streaming. What else? But the Medieval 2 as well, Total War, Shogun. Well, we'll see what people are up for seeing, and I'll sort of combine it with a talk about either the history of the game, history of the setting, or what's going on today. So it'd be more like an update in sort of the world as well as the stream. What else? Pretty L.A. Noire. Don't think I know that one. L.A. Noire. Hearts of Iron. What's this question here? Oh, video on Greece and Turkey fighting over Cyprus. That's an interesting topic. I've not I've not made a video on that. I've not even thought about that one, to be honest. That could be a very interesting. So the Turkish invasion in the 70s, having given Cyprus was under British rule, previously Ottoman rule, Venetian rule. The Crusaders had Cyprus at one point. So yeah, Cyprus has been through many hands and is of course divided today, north being under Turkish control and the south being under sort of Greek Cypriot control. So that's really that's got potential. Any others? But yeah, that's I love suggestions like that going forward to make videos to either shorts or long form, and we'll see how it is. In terms of the long form stuff, I'm hoping to make sort of videos with sort of historical photographs or footage. I think at the moment animations maybe a bit beyond me, so that's the first stage. I'd like to do regular live streams as well. Maybe on the weekend, maybe during the week. Really depends what people want, what I can do. I obviously will adapt to the audience. So if Sunday's a good time, this time on a Sunday or a bit earlier, then I'm happy to do that. If during the week is better as well, also happy to do that. And I've thought about Twitch as well. I don't know if I talk about Twitch on a YouTube stream, YouTube might not like it, but let's do it anyway. So I don't know if people would be as interested on Twitch. I mean, if I'm doing some of the gaming stuff, then maybe they would. But that's something. What's this one? Another game? Son of Rome. I think I've heard of that one. I think that's quite an old game now. Well, it doesn't matter. Happy to stream an old game, but that's worth doing. And I know I've got lots of military fans on here as well. So I don't know. Would Call of Duty interest people? Obviously, it's a very straightforward game to stream. Might not necessarily tie in with the historical element of the channel, but I do not mind if people are interested in seeing that. That would be nice. So just let me just scroll back up on the chat, see, just make sure I haven't missed anyone out. No. Oh, here we go. Going back a bit now, but the English Civil Wars. Yeah, that's an interesting topic, because the English Civil Wars are sort of one of those that, until very recently, there wasn't that much emotion in them. But Oliver Cromwell, for example, I mean, he's been a sort of divisive character for a while. That's not new. But like so much of history, the emotion behind it now is so strong. It's so strong that it's clouding judgment, and that's a problem. That's a problem in lots of history at the moment. Is that so people are just allowing emotions to get the better of them and using it to advance agendas rather than real history. And if you want an idea of the way history is progressing, it's so much more about theory and getting the evidence to conform to a conclusion, rather than looking at primary sources and going forward, looking at primary sources and sort of allowing the conclusion to make itself, shall we say. And that's really the mark of whether it's a video, whether it's something you're reading, if something is worth the paper it's written on. How much does it use primary sources? How much does it contextualize primary sources? That is so important. And it's so much of it doesn't do that. And I'll tell you a topic that is the absolute epitome of this, and that's Winston Churchill and the Bengal famine, which I will hopefully be making a long-form video about soon, because so many of Churchill's critics, I don't know if they've not read them or they're deliberately ignoring them, but if you just look at the primary sources, it's nothing like what people are claiming it is. So that will be definitely one to look out for. What else we got? What else? What's Door Kickers 2? Never heard of that one. What was it? Call of Duty. Well, Call of Duty 2. Okay. Was it Twitch isn't that good? YouTube's better for streaming. Yep, that might be true. Yeah. Sorry about the looking back and forth here. I'm trying to just glance as quickly as I can. So yep. In terms of other games, I think Battlefield maybe. I've not really played Battlefield. Someone could tell me actually a bit better about sort of how accurate. I think was it Battlefield 1 that sort of created these fanciful World War One weapons, which I don't really mind as long as it gets people into the subject. That's always good. So happy to see that. Not really played that much, but that might be interesting to stream if people want it. What else have we got? What does this one say? Sorry about the technical side of this is making it tricky. I've saved a few of your... Will says, I've saved a few of your shorts debunking historical misconceptions. I'll use them in an argument when I can. Thanks for the research you put in. Yes, thank you for that, Will. The research is a big part of it. I mean, like people look at short videos, short form content videos, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. The amount of research that you have to put into these very short videos is huge. And what's so difficult about them is you can't make a mistake. You know, your brand, your reputation, your credibility is dependent on everything being factual. Everything. So something slightly decontextualized, some slight emphasis being wrong, the whole video has to be taken down. And fortunately, that's not happened to me yet. It has happened in the sort of editing stage where I realized I've made a mistake and had to abandon an entire video. But that's why you do the checks. That's why you do the research. That's why you cross-reference. And so far, nothing has got through. So I'm happy about that. So long form, exactly the same applies to long form. Although I think people understand a bit more when it comes to long form content. If you make a half an hour long video or an hour long video, people understand naturally lots of research goes into that. But I think with the short form stuff, they think it's easy. Like the dancing videos on TikTok, on YouTube Shorts, yeah, they're easy. Just learn the moves. Yeah, timing might be hard, whatever, but it's a few seconds. If you're making story form videos on TikTok about history, they are a lot harder, and that's really something to bear in mind when you see these things. That a lot of research has gone into them, so finding the sources, finding the accurate sources. I mean, like take my video on the Koh-i-Noor diamond. The amount of research that went into that was very big, and there was lots of misleading sources on that one. Lots of sort of the way the Indian press covered. I think it was the Attorney General's decision to say that the diamond wasn't stolen. It wasn't inaccurate. It's just they chose to focus on specific things. Each media outlet focused on something different. So what that meant was I got a completely varied picture of what the guy had actually said and what the implication was of it. So I had to do a lot of research on that one to make sure what I was saying about him was 100% accurate. And of course, with the Koh-i-Noor, it went from one conqueror to another. The British Empire ended up in possession of it, which is why it's still the property of the royal family to this day. Previously owned by the Sikh Empire, previously owned by an Afghan warlord, previously owned by the Shah of Persia. I can't remember what's his name. Nadir Shah, the the Persian ruler, and before he sacked Delhi, it was part of the Peacock Throne in the Mughal Empire. So that's the story of that. Let me just have a quick look at the chat. What's this one? Battlefield 1 is what got me into history. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. What else? Okay, Battlefield 1 is, just reading Christian Wilson's comment, Battlefield 1 is somehow very accurate, but not at the same time. Does treat it with respect, though. Okay, that's all you ask for in a game. Like I said, you don't have to, conform entirely, but as long as it's broadly within the historical boundaries, then I think that's important. I'd tell you something actually I'd thought about doing. I'd like to hear what you've got to say. I've thought about making videos about the most historically inaccurate films. Historically inaccurate films sort of that Hollywood has made. So not documentaries, but sort of feature films. Not from the point of view that, like I say, artistic license is fine, but where it's so egregious that it's highly distorting. Because what you have at the moment, and I think it's a very interesting phenomenon, people don't read. The way people learn about history now is almost entirely from a screen. So, and it's mostly through fiction. I'm talking about the average people, not people who have a general interest in history. If you best example is a film like Braveheart, which is so historically inaccurate that God only knows how they allowed it to be made. Yes, it's not a documentary, whatever. It's so bad, but that informed a lot of people's ideas of what history was like of that period of Scotland and England, King Edward, William Wallace. However nonsensical it was, that created in people's minds an idea of what happened that was totally false. And it's the same with the other big one, and I might make a reaction video to this, is the series. I believe it was a series, or it might have been a film from a while ago, a few decades ago. The program Roots, the American program Roots. So that, I think that really created an idea. Hang on a second. Sorry, I've just out the corner of my eye. Is that a super chat, or is that a donation I've seen? Wow, the Enrieb. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wow, that is the first amount of money I've ever had. That is wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm just taken aback. I'm taken aback that someone would actually put money forward towards me. Thank you so much. I'll read that comment, of course. A country that forgets its past has no future. Often British history is misrepresented by the media. Why do you think this is? So, why do I think it's misrepresented? It's for a few reasons. Firstly, media is about entertaining. It's about entertaining, and it's also, which means that actual historical, the actual history of things is less important than the entertainment. So narrative is everything. Because real history can't be narrative based. It can a bit, but not too much, because it's just too complicated. There's too many moving parts. There's too many agendas which change at the drop of a hat. So that's why that it can't be like that. But it's so easy if you're presenting history in media in one way or another to have British Empire bad, everyone else good. That's it. It's so simple, and it's easily digestible. People can relate to it, and it's that's how it goes. There's also the general what's the word, disposition of those in the media. Most people in the media have a worldview that does not like the British Empire, does not like America, does not like sort of European civilizations, for want of a better word. It could be an empire, it could be a nation, vis-a-vis non-European countries. So if you looked at American films from many decades, not even that many decades ago, even as late as the 90s or early 2000s, America was always the goodie. America was always the goodie, and someone else was the baddie. It was America's number one, and by the way, I thought they were great films. That was maybe, that wasn't so historically accurate. Yes, there were some that were more subtle. There's plenty of films about Vietnam where the Americans are not portrayed very well. By the way, I think both American and worldwide perception of the Americans in Vietnam is very unfair. I think America's really badly maligned in Vietnam, despite everything. I know there's lots of things that they did wrong, but against the people they were fighting, just the comparison, there's just no comparison. So I think that's really unfortunate. Just a quick look at the chat. What's this say? Jordan says, can't watch because I'm at work. Want to say you're a bloody legend. Well, thank you very much. You're a legend for that comment. Yes, thank you. So yeah, that's how that works. But now there is just this idea that sort of, maybe, like I said, American and European, it's Western bad, non-Western good, and they don't really want to shift from that narrative. And you could maybe that's because of, just in Hollywood at least, Chinese funding of a lot of studios. I don't know about that though, because there's still plenty of leeway even within that. And but if you go along now with a script, either fact or fiction, that portrays a sort of countervailing view. Let's say American involvement somewhere was good, or British involvement was somewhere, or French even, was somehow viewed as positively. It just, however factually correct you would be, the sort of the people producing it would not like that. I mean, all you have to do is watch the BBC or watch anything. Just the way they portray things is just very indicative of this. It's simple, black and white, Western bad, non-Western good. Maybe a few redeeming characters in between, but pardon me, that's mostly how it goes. Let me just have a quick look at the comments again. I'm going to say both sides did horrible things in Vietnam, but both sides have basically said that was sad and that's unfortunate. Yeah, they did, but like I say, sort of, if we're comparing what America did compared to what the Viet Cong did, or the North Vietnamese army, there's just no comparison. There's just no comparison. They're yeah, there really isn't. And the way it ended, and I don't know too much about this, so don't quote me too much on this, but the repercussions for non-communists in Vietnam, and particularly would-be southern Vietnam, after Vietnam was taken over by the communists, were very severe. And I think that's completely glossed over. I think it's just like America was bad for being there, they had to get out, but it's forgotten what the consequence of them leaving was. I have to do my research into that, but I'm vaguely aware of there being many reprisals against sort of enemies of the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese after the takeover of Saigon and the capture of the South. So maybe I could make a video on that. So we'll have to see. But yeah, going back to the war in Ukraine, I'd like to I'd again like to hear what you've got to say. I'd like people to sort of explain to me, and it seems maybe it's for American viewers, because I feel like the British debate is very much left, right, centre, is pro-Ukrainian. But why in America it seems to have become so polarized? I don't really understand it, especially given the money that America is sending to Ukraine. I understand why people don't like Ukrainian corruption. I really understand that. But Ukraine is not being given money. That's the important part. The nature of the aid is that America is giving Ukraine money to spend on American weapons and equipment. So America knows how much it's giving, and therefore would know how much they would be spending on the equipment. So it's not like this money they can just, when America's not looking, run off with it and line their own pockets. It doesn't work like that. So why there is so much, and also understanding the cost of American involvement in a war if America was directly involved, however much they're spending now would be so much greater. So I really don't. Maybe someone can explain to me why there is that sort of instinctive sort of anti-Ukraine sentiment. I think it's on the right at the moment in America. Is it just because it's a left-wing president? And if the tables were turned, if a right-wing president said, we're going to support Ukraine, exactly the same criticisms would come from the left. And it's just a case of that's how polarized things are now, that if one side does one thing, the other instinctively wants to attack them for it, and therefore comes up with the reasoning for it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know, but I'd like to hear from someone, because people haven't really given me a satisfactory explanation as to why America shouldn't have supported Ukraine in the way it has done so far. Let's have a look. Let's have a quick look at the chat, see if people have actually responded. Oh yes, someone just saw a comment, just going back to what I was saying. Yeah, people with glasses, I think, was Cambodia, yes. Because the Khmer Rouge banned the wearing of glasses. I think it was even punishable by death, because that implied you were an intellectual. It means you were reading, and if you were reading, you might read something that says that what the Khmer Rouge were doing was a bad idea, and you didn't have to read much to realise what the Khmer Rouge was doing was a bad idea. So it's hardly surprising that the sort of the evil that they were, that they did something like that. So yeah, glasses was not Vietnam. That was Cambodia. Also, and I made a video about this. Equatorial Guinea. In Equatorial Guinea, the dictator Francisco Macias Nguema. And by the way, this is what I love about YouTube, and what I think what I've done. I never would have thought I could make a video about Equatorial Guinea. Who's even heard of it? Some very small country in Africa, and it got 1.8 million views about its dictator. I could not believe it. I was so happy that this video about a very niche topic, but I thought was interesting, and I thought I could present in an interesting way, got such traction, and so many people were able to learn something, and I was able to learn from them. People taught me about stuff about the situation that I didn't know, but it's just so off the radar for most people, and for the general understanding. So I was thrilled that I was able to do something like that. Just quick look at the chat. I'll just say more videos about the situation in the Middle East. Yep, could do. That is, I suppose it depends on the situation, really. It really does. Lots of factors at play. And I'll tell you what's quite hard about making videos in the Middle East about the Middle East now. Historical ones are a bit easier, but because they're such closed societies, making videos about Iran and Saudi Arabia, so much of the modern media, coverage of them is speculation because they're closed, because everything's secretive. It's all about rumors and what's going on behind closed doors and this, that, and the other, which makes things very difficult. And because a lot of the time the Western press doesn't want to be too investigative because they'll lose access, then it makes it very hard. It makes it very hard because they're dependent on the regime to report, so it can be very difficult. So videos about the Middle East, would be tricky. Obviously, like I say, some countries better than others, but that's obviously the main fight of the last few years has been Syria, Iraq, and sort of that conflict is that so many people have been involved in, and could do a history of sort of the Syrian civil war, but in terms of like contemporary stuff, I think it's just very difficult to inform people on, because it's just the information you get is so unreliable. Yeah, so let's have a look what else. Yeah, okay. Person says, you talk about history of the, yeah, I could make more videos about the history of the Middle East. That would be good. I'll tell you one I could make, which is the history of Iran, because there's this idea that Iran was a democracy until it was overthrown by the CIA. That's absolute rubbish. That's absolute rubbish. And so I could make a video sort of debunking that idea. But by the way, a lot of that idea, I don't want people to just blame sort of Iranians or anti-Americans for believing that. A lot of the idea that the Shah came to sort of full power because of the CIA was perpetuated by none other than the CIA themselves. So they've got every bit to blame in this. They're hardly someone who were unfairly accused of overthrowing a foreign government, because they very much helped perpetuate the idea that they were involved in overthrowing this foreign government. At least specific agents did. So that might be a very interesting video to make about. What else? Oh yeah, just going back to the Ukraine one. Very easy to play. Very card to play to the home crowd at the moment that this side is giving foreigners money, my side will spend it on you. Yes, that's true. That is true, but I think the same is true in the UK though, and the same in much of the EU, and for whatever reason that's just not working. Or sorry, not working, it hasn't happened. So we currently have the Conservative Party is in power in the UK, and the Labour Party is in opposition. So in this case, the left-wing party, there has been a few sort of minor figures who have opposed British support of Ukraine, but the Labour Party's been very much, for all the disagreements there is, they've been pretty much behind Ukraine, and Britain has spent a lot of money sending arms and equipment to Ukraine. So I wonder why they're not making that argument. They're not making the argument that we shouldn't send money to Ukraine because we could better spend it at home. Even though they do argue, obviously being a left-wing party, they naturally want more government spending, but they haven't made it vis-a-vis Ukraine. That's it. I find that interesting, and I don't really know what the debate is too much in Poland, but I'm pretty confident that it's across the political spectrum. There is, I mean, Poland's maybe a different example because it's not an ocean away from Ukraine; it's a neighbour. But Poland has given lots and lots of support to Ukraine, and it hasn't been divisive. There's been, I think, pretty strong consensus on that. So yeah, I think that's interesting. Well, if the CIA, just going back, just having a look at the comments here. If the CIA did something nobody would have known, no, people know plenty of things about what the CIA have done. So yeah, yeah. The CIA is an interesting one as a historical topic because so much gets pinned on them, and sometimes they're responsible, but they're mainly. I think the best way of putting it is that they assist what was going to happen anyway. So there are very few countries where the CIA were if it wasn't for the CIA, there wouldn't have been a coup. So Chile is one. So the CIA really was strongly behind the coup in Chile. But others, it's just sort of, I mean, people point to like the other Latin American governments, like the military juntas that were propped up or came into power with CIA assistance, but there wasn't much. There was some, but like I say, it would have probably happened anyway. They only gave minor assistance to what was already going to happen. And don't think for one second that the KGB weren't doing exactly the same thing, trying to get their people into power or their allied people into power if they weren't already in power. So it's really not as simple as there was this maligned American force, because there was a Soviet one as well, and that was very important, really important, and overlooked because America has a Freedom of Information Act. There are congressional hearings on things, so a lot of that's the nature of democracy. A lot of the reasons we know about this stuff is because America is a democracy, whereas the Soviet Union and now Russia is anything but a democracy, which is why we know far less about the KGB's activities. And bear in mind, the current president of Russia, Putin, is a former KGB agent who was stationed abroad. He was stationed in East Germany, in Dresden, I believe. So that might give you an idea of why we know so much about one and so little about the other. What else? Yep, someone just said Trench, 1918. Yep, KGB were just as bad. Absolutely, they were. Absolutely. What else? Do I respond to this? Why do I hate India? No, I don't hate India. Not at all. KG. What else we got? In fact, covering the various. I've got a comment here from Phil, which says, in fact, covering the various conflict in Southern Africa, bush wars, would shed some light on a largely forgotten conflict. Yeah, that would do. And I'll tell you, the war in the Congo in the last couple of decades, so the Great African War, as they call it, the civilian casualties have been utterly appalling. Millions have died, and I find it fascinating how it just doesn't get the coverage. Does not get the coverage. Like the warring factions in the Congo and the other countries who support the various factions, for reasons I'm at a complete loss as to why that is. Really am. What else are people saying? Do I think the CIA killed Kennedy? Probably not. Probably not. I know there was some talk of some documents recently that might have showed he did. They did, but I didn't see them. I don't know what's really changed, so I doubt it. The various reasons why I doubt it. Yeah. Was this KGB helped the Chernobyl incident? They might have done. Was it say they hid information? Well, cover-ups were a big part of the whole Soviet apparatus, so that's hardly surprising if it's true. I don't know that though. So yes, that's how that one has been. Yeah, I mean, I might make a video just as I'm talking about it. I'm thinking I might make a video about the Congo, and how that's how it's been ignored. I think that's actually the biggest story. I mean, conflicts are hardly new, and even conflicts in Africa are not new. But why not no one, but why it got such little coverage when such devastation was going on, and why it just doesn't seem to make an impact in the at least in the Western media. It just does not have an impact in the same way as others. And I don't really have a good answer for that, so it might be worth investigating. And by the way, the historical videos I've made, or if you want to shed light on something, it's not limited to modern history. I've made videos on ancient Rome, on Alexander the Great. I mean, my video about, or at least on TikTok, about Julius Caesar got over 1 million views. So I know there's an appetite for all areas of history. And I've made videos about the Middle Ages, particularly the Last Stand videos, and I'm happy to make more if people think there's interesting subjects about the Middle Ages. I think one of the most interesting ones I made, which at least for me, interesting in researching, was the one about the siege of Svigetvar in modern day Croatia, and the Ottoman Empire, and how a small number of sort of Croatians and Hungarians held off probably the greatest army in the world at the time by probably the most powerful ruler in Europe and Asia at the time, Suleiman the Magnificent, and he died during the siege. Not from the war, he died because he was old, but how they caused the Ottomans such damage that they couldn't go much further in Europe, and that really, I think, the target was Vienna, and Vienna wasn't threatened for a long time after. So that was a really interesting episode to cover. And again, who's heard of the siege of Svigetvar? I mean, people in Croatia have. People in the Balkans may have done, but again, another really impressive story that is just lost to the West, even though it's there to be viewed, but it's just so few people know about it. Siege of Vienna is well known, so it's not everything to do with the Ottomans is not well known. The Siege of Vienna is well known. The fall of Constantinople is also well known, but there's so much in between that is just left out in the popular imagination. Let's have a look at some comments. Oh, that's an interesting one. Could do a video on the FLQ crisis in Canada. FLQ, I think it would be, wouldn't it? It was basically a Canadian version of the Troubles. Yes. I mean, I've heard all about it. I don't know too much about it, but that would be interesting to look at. Certainly would do. How many have we got? Just having a look. Anyway, as I was saying, back to sort of medieval history, there was the Last Stand videos and sort of various other sort of fun facts videos I've made. I know I'm going to be making a decision going forward. I really hope the long form stuff can be successful, and I really hope I can get a good reaction to it. But do I want to carry? I will be doing both. Don't get me wrong, I'll be doing both. But is my main focus going to carry on being short form content, or is it going to be long form? Both have got their advantages. Both have got their disadvantages. It really depends on how it pans out. So I'll be looking to do both, and I'll be looking for feedback on everything from sort of, like I say, what people think's good, what's bad, what else could be added, that sort of thing. And hopefully I will improve the studio setup. I appreciate the tolerance. I appreciate the tolerance in the meantime for the current setup, but it will improve. It will improve. That's how I plan to take things forward. And so like I was talking about Roman history and ancient history, I'm always trying to open a new avenue. If I think people can be interested in something, I don't want to get stuck down in one particular thing. Only videos about battles or only videos about key individuals. I really want it to sort of as many people as possible from as many angles to view the channel and to sort of to learn going forward. So that's why I had a video about Nero and playing the fiddle, as well as, like I say, the last stand battles, the siege of Svigetvar, the siege of Vienna. Completely unrelated topics, but I think they're interesting, and I think I can make something interesting of it and get people involved in one way or another. And that's how I'd like to do things going forward. And I'd like to do sort of collaborative streams as well. So either you could tell me other YouTubers who you'd want me to work with, or other social media personalities, or maybe tag my name with them if you want to see it. I'm sure, whichever way it works. Either to debate's the wrong word. It implies sort of competition, but have a sort of artistic discussion, or just agree with each other just for the fun of it. Talking about these things can be fun. I've listened to a lot of history podcasts, which are really entertaining, and yeah, I'd love to be part of them for the enjoyment, and that's what I'm hopefully trying to do. Hopefully, have done, sort of entertain people as much as inform them. I mean, obviously, one has to follow the other. Informing is the basis of history, and then I'll try and make it entertaining as well. What does it say? Let's have a quick look at the chat. Use the short form videos as trailers for the long form. I could do it. It's okay. Yeah, that's a good idea actually. Like sort of like a cut clip. A cut clip from them would be good. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Thank you, the Enrieb, and thank you again for your donation earlier on. I've not forgotten. I'm still thrilled that someone has done that. So thank you for both of those things. And yep. So yeah, all stuff to do going forward, and I will announce when, if I do appear with other people, if I go on podcasts or whatever it may be, I'll announce it's all happening and try and inform you all as much as possible. I'll tell you what's been a little disappointing is the lack of growth on Instagram, because it's been so good on TikTok and YouTube. But what Instagram has that the others don't is it's very easy to communicate with people. I love communicating with everyone. Love to hear it. Love to answer messages. It's just so much harder on the others. And Instagram's a very strange one. I've seen a lot of history influencers who've got enormous followings on TikTok, on YouTube, and then virtually nothing on Instagram. Very strange, but there you are. But that's obviously a great way of keeping people informed. More so, I think, than like the TikTok stories or YouTube announcements, because people don't interact with it in the same way. I'm not complaining people don't watch my stuff. I'm just complaining I don't have that access to inform people. So hopefully I can improve on that going forward. Yeah, I mean, I recently made a video about the Stone of Destiny, which did pretty well on Instagram, which was nice. And which actually brings me to the Coronation, which, as you've probably guessed from some of my videos, I did attend. I went down, I camped out for the Coronation, and it was brilliant. I had a great time. It was a real sight to behold. Really lucky to be part of that history. And if by the way, you want an idea of why you shouldn't believe what you see on social media, and not just social media but regular media, so many people were implying that no one's going to be there, no one's enthusiastic about this coronation, there's no enthusiasm. We don't like the king. Blah 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 blah. There are people who think like that. There were enormous crowds there. I mean, I arrived over 24 hours in advance, and it was impossible to get a spot. I lucked out because I managed to make friends with people. But there were the rows of people along the Mall around Westminster Abbey were several deep. And then on the day itself, thousands and tens of thousands more came. And by the time the king actually came past where I was, it was over 10 people deep behind me in terms of the rows. I do not understand where people got into their heads that there just wasn't enthusiasm for the coronation. Like I say, some people, fine, they don't like it, whatever. But it seems like another case of a very loud, vocal minority creating a real false impression of what was going on. And then also there were people of all ages there, which again I'd been led to believe wasn't going to happen. I'd been led to believe it was mostly old people who liked it. There were loads of young people there, and sort of everything. Other ages as well. So there were old people. There were sort of people a bit younger than that, but as well as young people, sort of like student age, kids, or sort of like young professional types. The whole lot was there. So I don't know where people were getting these ideas in their head. It'll be interesting to see the television viewing numbers. Let's have a quick look at the comments. Did I see the Grim Reaper? No. Does anyone know what that was? I've seen the videos. Was it a priest? Was it a priest walking past the door? The shadow of that. I think that's what it must have been. Because I didn't see it. Well, I wasn't at Westminster Abbey, but yes, I've seen the video. No Grim Reaper, unfortunately, in my coronation experience. No Grim Reaper at all. Lots of journalists. I saw lots of journalists, people from all over the world. In terms of the ones that came past me, we had British, American, German, Danish, Dutch, Swiss. What were the others? Canadian, Australian, quite a few Australian actually, journalists, and this was before like the procession started, so this was just to report what was going on the Mall and Buckingham Palace. So really interesting to watch. And I thought there was a great atmosphere in London of the day of the coronation. London's a city famous for being miserable, and I didn't feel like that at all. I felt that there was a really, really happy atmosphere both before, during, and after. So I think, if anything, the coronation was a great thing, just for London alone. As obviously the whole of the UK. Just have a quick look at the comments. The monarchy is apart from English national identity. I don't really know what that means. I think it's part of the identity of the whole of Britain. Oh, sorry, is that supposed to be a part or a part? I think it's supposed to say a part. Two separate words. So yes, that's true. That's definitely true. And I've got high hopes for King Charles. He's been through the University of Life. He's the oldest man or woman to ever become the monarch. The age of 74, I think he was. That's quite an age to take it. So I think he's going to be good. I hope so. And I think he's got many good qualities. Obviously, like anyone, he's got his problems, and I think having to wait to take the throne his entire life hasn't helped. And if you think about him vis-a-vis the Queen, the Queen was 26 when she became Queen. 26. So picture him where he was at 26. He was a very different person. So yeah, it's a completely different set of circumstances. Don't worry, I just read the comment. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about not being a native speaker. I got what you meant. That's all right. And so yeah, I think sort of the lack of support for the monarchy, I think it's just a bit more public than it was. I think people want to be were a bit more quiet about it when the Queen was around, but now Charles, they're choosing to be a bit more public, but I still think he's got overwhelming support. I really don't think he needs to worry too much about that. So I mean, the place where I was, the point where I was at, a few protesters came along and tried doing whatever it was they were doing. And I think they were really surprised at just how hostile the crowd was towards them. I think they thought either some people would support them or that some people would just say nothing. But they got real hostility from the crowd who was there, not in a physical way or anything, but just people were shouting them down. They were telling them to go away, and but really sort of like vocally. And I think they were really taken aback by that. I think they thought that the crowds at the coronation would be a pushover, and it was not like that at all. Not at all like that. So yeah, I think they got a bit of a shock there. Let's just have a quick look. Quick look at what is going on the chat. Very good, very good. So yes, and by the way, you want an idea of how unpredictable this can be? My videos on the coronation on TikTok are currently in the millions, whereas they're in the thousands or tens of thousands on YouTube. It's really interesting, sort of being a creator, being a content creator, how different platforms behave differently. Really fascinating. You can make a video that is an absolute world beater on one platform and then just falls flat on its face on another. It really does, and you've no telling how it's going to pan out. None whatsoever. So yeah, that's how it ends up being. But I take it as a challenge. I know what I'm in for. I know what I the waters in which I swim. I understand the nature of this stuff. I'm gonna keep going and keep making good content. And history is a subject that never dries up. There's never a time when history stops. There's always something. There's always another topic to address. There's always another angle to look at things. So yeah, I'm not worried about running out of things to say anytime soon, and it's ongoing. The sort of discussions will be ongoing. The what's being discussed in the wider world will be ongoing, and I'll be making that going forward. Just want to, before we finish, I just want to sort of mention the war in Ukraine again. And I think what people have to understand with Ukraine as the counteroffensive happens is they need to manage expectations. That's really important, because I think a lot of people are hoping that with all this Western weaponry that Ukraine now has, and all the new brigades that have been raised trained to ready to use it, that there's going to be a decisive breakthrough very soon, and suddenly the Russians will be completely repelled from all of Ukrainian territory. That needs to be really temper those expectations. This could be a very slow process, and you'd hope that they make a breakthrough in certain areas, but there's no guarantee of that. And it might be that they make a breakthrough in one place but not in another, or they make a breakthrough and then they're forced back and then they break through again. You really don't know. You really don't know how it's going to be. So you've really got to not to get ahead of yourself. And I think at one point a lot of Westerners did get ahead of themselves, and expecting sort of there were a time where there were lots of Ukrainian victories, and I think they just thought they'd keep coming. But the Russians have adapted, they've changed, and if you look at Russian history, and this is something I'm going to be doing going forward, I'm going to be making videos on Russian military history and what's led to this war in Ukraine, how Russia's been in previous wars. They're in it for the long haul, and do not write them off. Do not write them off. Sort of their greatest strength is their endurance. And what they understand quite well is the longer they stay in it, the harder it is for Ukraine. Because Westerners are very impatient. They want results immediately. And especially when they're fronting a lot of the money for Ukraine to keep going, they have very high expectations and want to know that the large amounts of money that they're spending will go towards victory. And the longer that can be denied to Ukraine, the better the hand Russia has, because they're not beholden to anyone really in terms of time, whereas is America, is various European countries. Let's say there's a stalemate for the rest of this year. Are they really going to donate another tens of billions next year or the year after if the war keeps going? I don't know that they will. I think eventually they might just get tired of it. So yeah, it will be really interesting to see, and like I say, really temper those expectations. But the videos I'll be making on Russia, I'll be talking about so many wars in Russian history. You've got the Second World War, the Crimean War, Napoleon's invasion of Russia, the Great Northern War. You name it, it all sort of ties into the present day in one way or another, and I'll explain why in future videos. Let me just have a quick look at the chat. What does it say? Ukrainian counteroffensive to succeed is getting slimmer due to Ukraine's problems to cover up their air defense gaps. Could be true. Maybe the Patriot missile will improve that, as we suspect they now have. So that will be interesting to see. And yeah, that's I think that's it on the Ukraine front. That'll be developing. So I'll be making videos. I will say though, if you want to understand why Ukraine has done so well, one of the main reasons is the way they've been trained, because they've been trained by Western armies, particularly the American and the British, but I think the Canadians as well. I can't remember who else, but I know those three certainly. So much of it, the army is designed to be sort of act independently on the ground, whereas the Russian army is extremely hierarchical. So you do nothing without your superiors, whereas I know that the British army, for example, in an operation called Operation Orbital, where they trained over 20,000 Ukrainians, they taught them the importance of NCOs and sort of acting with initiative on the ground. That structure that the British army uses, that the American army uses, is so important. It's so important, rather than this top-down model with sort of remote generals. And that's not to say that Russia hasn't adapted, because the ridiculous way they were operating in the early part of the war has ended. They don't do that anymore. There's no more supply convoys that they entered Ukraine in parade formation, which just made them absolute sitting ducks for ambush. Totally ridiculous. They don't do that anymore, and they've learned how to deal with Ukrainian anti-armor tactics. But that's the fundamental difference between the Russian and Ukrainian army, is the way they've been trained. One a Western style, one a Russian style, and that's, I think, often overlooked. There's a lot of focus on weaponry, which is limited, because you can have the best weapons in the world, but if you've got no good organisation, no morale, then it's useless. I mean, look at the Afghan army. Didn't mean anything. They had Black Hawk helicopters, they had night vision equipment, state-of-the-art rifles, and they got bulldozed by the Taliban for a variety of reasons. But yeah, that's how it came through. That's that's what it ended up being. We could talk about that, and that's actually that's a topic for maybe another live stream. Is sort of whilst the Western military model in terms of organization is still, I think, absolutely top notch, Western leadership at the moment, I think, is really at its lowest. I mean, the American pullout from Afghanistan, like the way the generals conducted themselves, and not just the generals, but the politicians. The soldiers on the ground were, superb, some of the best in the world, but they were completely let down by their leadership. And this is happening across the West in military and political leadership. They're just the people on the lower ranks are being completely let down. I mean, Afghanistan as well. Like, it's now, I'm pretty sure I read that that they knew all along that things weren't going that well. This is the leadership, the generals, and similar in Iraq. The way there was just no plan. The fighting was done well, but there was just no plans. I'm just have a look at the comments. True or not, including. What does it say? True or not, including the fact that in the beginning of the war, the Russians were overwhelmingly outnumbered, and Western intelligence and trainings, Ukraine had the upper hand. If Russia was outnumbered, wasn't that only because they didn't commit the troops, because they thought that they could overwhelm Ukraine with the forces they had, and then were dealt a dose of reality. So, and they were still better armed, I think. Still, well, were they better armed? I mean, at least it looked like they were. I mean, they still outnumbered Ukraine in terms of armor and aircraft. I don't know about individual soldiers, but Russia still absolutely had a numerical advantage in armor and aircraft. So yeah, not sure about overall numbers, like I say, but there you go. Let's have a quick look. Yeah. So yes. So that crisis of leadership, I think, is something we'll be looking at, and I do wonder now what is being said about Russia, and will things change in America, at least with political change? So if the whichever Republican candidate it will be, wins the next election, will they clean house with the military? With the upper ranks of the military? It'd be very interesting to see that because of their failures so far. Whereas it's not going to happen if there's no political change, I don't think. I suppose things could get much worse, but they're sort of tied together. So the current American Secretary of Defense, who has a lot to answer for the Afghanistan pullout, he's a former general. I imagine he'll stay on in his job if Biden wins another term, and if he doesn't, then he'll be out the door immediately. I can't imagine someone like him would serve under a Republican, given the way everything has been. So yeah, that would be really interesting to keep an eye on going forward. So the top echelon of Western leadership, and I really wonder what the conversations are in NATO at the moment. I don't know if people know about that. So yeah. Oh, hang on, is that another super chat from the Enrieb? I think it is. Wow, thank you very much. God, I still can't believe this. Really can't believe it. Wow, £5. Thank you very much. If you do a crash course in history, how would you break it down? How would you break it down as into subtopics or chapters? That's an excellent question. So, what I would do for something like that, I would break it down firstly into time periods. I think that's the most simple way forward. Into time periods, but make sure that there is overlapping themes. So the idea of well, maybe politics, culture, science, military, all these things which are all present in each period of history, but how they apply in each era. I think that would be very important, and sort of the nature of society. So how societies change. So sort of how Roman society was, how Greek society was. Maybe even let's take British history. How society changed pre and post Reformation. Because I think that's extremely important. And what people often don't do is they try and judge. And this is the worst thing they do. And if I had any history crash course, I would be very clear. I would make this clear immediately. Do not judge the past by the standards of the present. Do not do it. It is ahistorical. It's an unintelligent thing to do. It's an unwise thing to do. Don't do it. Don't do it at all. Make sure you understand what the standards of the day were, why people acted in the way, what mattered to them. Because plenty of things mattered to the ancients that mean nothing to us, and plenty of things matter, even in the West. Plenty of things matter to people in the West greatly, which people in non-Western countries would look at and think, why on earth do you care about that? And vice versa. So that has to be made incredibly clear. And I think the other thing, if I was doing a crash course in history, would be to make sure that people know specific pieces of knowledge. So dates, names, places, events. So much of it's abstract now. You speak to people, even historians. I studied history at university, and you'd be amazed how little people actually know the detail of history. The actual what happened, who was involved. And, I make a lot of videos on American history, and I get messages and comments from so many Americans saying, we're not taught about American history anymore, or if we are, we're only taught, like younger people are taught that just everything, like for example, I think even Elon Musk talked about this at one point. He said, like, a lot of kids don't know anything about George Washington, but they do know he was a slave owner. That's why you need this detail. And the same thing with like someone like Thomas Jefferson, this sort of great man, this incredible mind who did unbelievable things. All people can say is he owned slaves. That's how simple it was. I was like, that's not how it should be, and that's how I would absolutely teach against that. Understand the context. With Jefferson or Washington, understand that slavery was present in every society at that point. No one had abolished it. Or maybe with Jefferson, like the first country had just started to, but it was hardly the norm, and that's just not appreciated. I think partly because it's being used for political reasons, but that's what I would make clear on my crash course of history. Let me just have a quick look at the chat. What's this say? This is interesting. There was always a decline of motivation of young men on enlisting into the US Army. That might be true. And I wonder why that would be. And yeah, but I mean, I know I have many American military personnel following me in one form or another. I know there's many former Marines and serving Marines, soldiers as well. I'd be interested to hear from them, if that's the case, why people are not joining the American military, given its prominence in American society. I'd really want to know about that, especially compared to, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago. What's changed now? Because a lot of the risks are the same. So why aren't they joining? I'd want to know. What else have we got? Just having a look at the chat. Hunter Gatherer loves the content. Thank you very much. Good to hear a counter some of the selective narratives we hear. Yep, that's what I'm here for. People compare history in our own modern society too much, especially when both comparisons are very far from reality or understanding is too shallow. Yep, absolutely. Gold and silver, that is true. Um, yep, that's what's this? Okay. Um, an idea for a streaming. A video game that would be interesting is Ready or Not. A game where you play as a SWAT officer while society collapses around you. Ooh, that seems a bit too. That seems a bit too. What's the word? A bit too realistic, to be honest. I'm not sure. Would I feel comfortable playing that when given everything that's going on in the world? What if I'm defunded halfway through? How does that part of the game? Not sure. Let's have a look. Yeah. So yeah, that was my idea for the various things, the crash course and whatever else. By the way, I'd be interested to know from non-English speaking followers, and I know I have plenty. Is your history being abused in the same way? Is it being selectively taught, or taught from a very moralistic political point of view? Because a lot of the problems seem to be an Anglosphere problem. You know, American history, British history, Australian history, New Zealand history as well. I mean, Australia, for example, is something I could do a whole video about how Australia has been sort of painted with original sin for landing in on the continent of Australia. Again, sort of like this idea that they've disturbed the Garden of Eden, that somehow only wonderful things were happening before the Europeans turned up. So, but that's the English-speaking world. I don't. Maybe in France it's the same, or the Netherlands, or even outside of Europe, in non-Western countries. I know I've got followers in Singapore. I don't know how that's taught, and where else? Well, wherever else. I'm just interested to know. I'm interested to know, and because you often get. I've noticed this with sort of if you actually speak to people from non-Western countries, it's quite interesting. I find that even if it's countries that, let's say, had what you might think was a negative interaction with Britain or America, they've not got any animosity at all towards Britain and America. It tends to be a very elite thing, sort of an elite academic idea that sort of paints sort of these Western countries, these English-speaking countries, as these immoral, purely immoral, not never immoral, because every country is immoral at some point, but purely immoral beings. So yeah, I always want to hear from people in other countries. Spain. Oh, so someone's just commented. Spain, yes. Okay, that sounds interesting. Of course, Canada. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, Canada is really the front line of this. Yeah, I mean, you know, what is going on in Canada is just appalling in the way these things are being abused. And it shows you, I mean, Canada's the best example of why history matters, why it's not just sort of it's not just something that should be the interest of a few enthusiasts. It's because history is used to justify the present, and no more. This is happening no more than in Canada, where what is going on is just an utter nightmare. And yeah, that's incredibly worrying. Let me just have another quick look at the chat. Yeah, I mean, Juan, who from Spain, who commented, I'd be interested to know how Spanish history is being abused, and what Spain is being said to have done so wrong. Yeah, maybe I don't know, maybe the Inquisition. But then I suppose like I'd want to know why is it being portrayed as entirely evil? Because, like I said before, pointing out that any country did something wrong is pointless, because every country has done something wrong, or something by today's standards we would regret at some point or another. It's impossible not to. So how is it being taught, and how is it being used to justify, by certain people, to justify a present day action? That's what I'd want to know. Let's just a quick look. Let's just see. Yeah, of course there's a bit of a delay, so I have to let things run for a bit if I want to reply to people. Yep. Okay. So yeah, Spain would be one. Trying to think where else would be. Maybe the Netherlands. Obviously, the Dutch had an overseas empire, and I could make a video about the Dutch East India Company. You know, that was the largest company in the history of the world. I don't know if people know that there is no company today, with all the giants we have, Apple, Exxon, that was larger than the Dutch East India Company. So yeah, that would be nice to maybe hear from someone in the Netherlands. I mean, actually, as I think about it, Belgium is a very interesting one, because the Belgian Congo, or Belgium in the Congo, I should say, is one of the most exaggerated and distorted periods of modern history. The way sort of the Congo Free State is just, the reality is just so much different to what is portrayed. And what's really interesting about that one is that people take the Congo Free State and point out the very, very terrible things that did happen there as an example of why European colonialism was terrible, even though it wasn't colonialism, because the Congo Free State wasn't a colony. I don't think a lot of people realise this. It was the private property, the fiefdom of the king. It was a private estate. When Belgium ruled it as a colony, it was completely different. It wasn't like that at all. So, if anything, it was far better when it was a colony than when it wasn't. And also, not understanding what was going on before the Belgian presence there, before the Congo Free State. Tipu Tip and the sort of brutal, absolutely horrendous African slave raider and warlord who owned 10,000. I made a video about him. He owned 10,000 slaves at his death. 10,000. So just again this portraying as a sort of Garden of Eden beforehand, before Europeans set foot there, is just total nonsense. And particularly the Eastern Congo, because that was the area he operated on, it was just an absolutely appalling area to live, with the violence, the tribal violence. Tipu Tip was an Arab. He was an Arab slave trader. The Arabs had a slave trade that went along pretty much the entire East African coast. Zanzibar is where Tipu Tip had a property. And so the idea that that this was just, like I say, just this pristine land that was disturbed by the Europeans is utter nonsense. Let's have a quick look at the chat. Let's see. Heard in the Congo, Belgians cut off people's hands if they did not meet the quotas. I think it did happen. It did happen. I think it's to do with rubber rather than coal, although it might have been coal. Just the extent of it is just what is not clear, or, like I say, the context in which it happened. And from what I understand, that the total death toll is exaggerated. I mean, a lot of it comes from one particular historian or writer. I'm not even sure he's a historian. Called I think he's called Adam Hochschild. I think he's called, who wrote a very, very famous book called King Leopold's Ghost. King Leopold, by the way, over 30 books have been written about him. If you want an idea of the sort of how Eurocentric, in the worst way, that people are, over 30 books have been written about him. I think 2 have been written about Tipu Tip, if that, despite the carnage that he caused, because there's an interest in seeing history from one point of view and not another. And like I say, I think the Belgians ruled Congo relative, especially given the other people who had been ruling it previously. I mean, non-Europeans, and how it's run today. The Belgians ran the Congo pretty well as a colony when it formally became a Belgian colony, which was the Belgian Congo. So yeah, that's maybe another subject for a future video. Tip, by the way, my video on Tipu Tip on TikTok was my first ever video to get to a million views, which was a while ago now, which is very nice. So yeah, that's that story with Europe. How do we? Let's have a quick look at the chat again. Let's see. Yeah, that's a good idea from the Enrieb there. If you have a question for me, put a question mark. Put a question mark at the end. Yeah, just so I know. Just so I know. Also, I mentioned with the Belgians in the Congo, a lot of the people committing the atrocities in the Congo Free State were locally trained or acquired soldiers or policemen. I think policemen. Often it wasn't the Belgians. There were Belgians themselves who were doing it, and others, but a lot of it was dependent on native collaboration. Let's have a quick look. Quick look at the chat. I'd like to hear that. So, yeah, Christian Wilson says, I'm pretty sure in Trafalgar Square they put a statue of a guy who cut off heads in front of victims' families. They did, and I made a video about that. His name was John Chilembwe, and why they did that, beyond me, absolutely beyond me. By the way, this was a guy. It just shows you what they'll do for politics. The important thing to remember about this guy, he launched an anti-British rebellion in Malawi. The locals supported the British against him. The chief supported him, and in the end, he was killed at the hands of other Africans. I think it was the King's African Rifles, because he had no support. And there's lots of reasons why people speculate that he did it. Lots of people think that it might have actually more to do with his own personal bankruptcy and his own personal failures, rather than any high-minded or moral reasons for wanting to overthrow the British. So yeah, I mean that's what you've got. You've got people portraying this loser, this murderer loser, as a hero and putting him in Trafalgar Square. So what was so bad about that is Trafalgar Square, for any non-British viewers, Trafalgar Square is one of the most famous squares in London, and to get a statue or a bust of someone there, they had to have shown incredible service and dedication. Real heroes are there, real heroes. So Nelson, Sir Henry Havelock's there. General Gordon was there once upon a time, but they moved his statue to his school. Napier is there, and I think there's a bust of Admiral Jellicoe and Beatty, and then they put this guy, this Malawian rebel, useless rebel, who, yes, cut off a man's head in front of his children, and he was worthy apparently of being put next to Nelson and Havelock and Napier. I do not know what goes through these people's heads. I really don't. So, any final questions? We're going to wrap up the stream in a couple of minutes. So it's been great. A really fantastic stream so far. 2 hours. I'm really happy that people have tuned in. So yeah, I'll just give a quick opportunity for final questions. Let's hear what people have got to say. Again, the pause coming. Okay, first one. Were the Mau Mau rebels evil? I've heard they were horrific animals, yet whenever I Google it, they're depicted as heroes. Yes, they were evil. Yes. I'll have to get specific knowledge on it, but there was all sorts of weird, I don't know if it was voodoo or, I don't think it was voodoo, sorry, like magic involved, or sort of some sort of superstition around the sort of the killings. They were a really, really nasty bunch, and it's a good thing for Kenya and Britain that they were defeated. And by the way, more Kenyans joined, or Kenyans as they were then, joined the British to fight the Mau Mau than joined the Mau Mau. Let it go. The Algenese says he loves my work. Thank you very much. Would I say most British people support this sort of historical revisionism? They don't support it, but the problem is all the institutions are controlled by people who do. So there's not a lot. Well, that's the situation, unfortunately. Anyway, I will. Oh, have I made a video on Indian residential schools? No, not yet. There is. I think there is a story to be told there. I haven't looked into that too deeply, especially given the alleged discovery, shall we say, a year or so ago. But I'll just grab this as I finish and hold it up again. Just as I finish the stream, you can see the side of my head in the mirror. There we go. Thank you again to everyone who contributed to getting this play button, and I'm gonna wrap up the stream in a second. Thank you again, and my name's Joel. This is History Revealed, and I'll be making many more videos soon, and I hope to speak to you all on other streams. Look out for the long form videos, look out for the short form. It's all going to be coming going forward. So thanks to everyone who tuned in today, and I will speak to you all soon. All right, goodbye.